Welcome back to Operator Syndrome. We're talking to Jose here, and we're going to get into our deployment to Mosul.
Mhm.
Um, where to start? Um, we'd been to our first deployment was to Iraq, Al
Mhm.
Assad, and we were mostly sitting on the bench,
Yep.
some more than others,
Yeah.
and we got in, but weren't working the whole time. And then this was our first time back to Iraq, right?
Mhm.
What were your thoughts leading into that one? You remember?
Let me see. I was excited. I was new to a leadership position
Mm-hmm.
as a Carl Gustav team leader in a weapon squad team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was excited mainly because, well, I get a chance to show off or at least practice my leadership skills that I've learned so well in Ranger School.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But also, it's I have a tab, so I'm part of the elite.
You're a
You know,
made man.
I'm a made man, dude. And so I was excited about that mainly. You know, whatever happens in Mosul, I'd say it's gonna happen. Let's do it. But at least I have a tab now.
There you
So
go. So you go anywhere as long as you got the tap. Just
yes.
crushing new guys wherever they
Yep.
go and instilling fear. Um, that it doesn't seem that's not quite your personality. Although there are some people who that is their personality. That I
Yeah.
mean, that is 100% a real thing, and
Yes.
God bless them because that's what inspires the fear amongst new people, dissuades the weak-hearted from joining the Rangers, knowing that those
Mhm.
people exist. I don't think that was quite your style, though.
No.
Um,
I was more of a friend,
you
a
were a
confidant.
private coddler. You would
That's
coddle.
right.
You loved them. You'd
I
give
did.
you'd hug them. You'd tell them how smart they were. That was you.
Yes.
So okay, so we go to Mosul.
Hmm.
Um, and we're gonna do the striker thing. So we're gonna be
Yes.
operating the strikers, and in Mosul, and the strikers, the way we were working it, was that the weapon squad dudes would be when we did the gaffs, right?
Yes.
Ground assault force. So when we'd roll out in vehicles, the weapon squad guys would man the vehicles, and then
Hmm.
the line squad dudes would do what they do. Were
Yes.
you did you have any feelings about that? Were you feeling like you were cool with manning the vehicles? Did you feel like you didn't want to be hanging back with with the strikers? You didn't want to be dealing with, the maintenance and all that type of
Mhm.
stuff. Did you feel any kind of way about that?
Um.
Because you weren't a weapons squad prior. You were a line guy.
Yes.
So how'd you feel about that?
Well, you when it came to the part where we have to sit on the strikers while the main force does or the rest of the squads does either the clearing and stuff like that. I wanted that because I wanted to be my main goal was be a team leader and kick the doors in,
Hmm.
like like when I was a private, I see my team leader do it. But at the same time, I knew that this is a new experience. It's a leadership experience. I watched you. You were a team leader at the time, and the rest of the team leaders, and I'm like, man, however they do it, that's how I have to do it. And I will watch you guys work, and I didn't mind sitting back and watching the rest of the guys do their thing and learning as much as I could from them while at the same time, learning my job as a brand new, even though it was a Carl Gustav team leader, it's still that little name on it for me, which is huge coming from my background. That you give me the opportunity to lead one dude,
Yeah.
it's, it was amazing, and I took it to I took it to heart, and I was like, man, I'm gonna do my best to learn how to take the barbed wire out of these tires after every mission, making sure they're good to go, ready to go on target whenever we need to go. And I took it very seriously and very, you know, I wanted, I wanted to do my best.
I mean, I was after I got back from school, I was a gun team leader. and I felt the same way. I was like, I felt like this is a big deal, dude. Like the
Yeah,
Rangers are letting me be a gun team leader. Like
exactly.
I felt
Exactly.
like it was a big deal, and I was honored to be able to do that. And I had a lot of fun as a gun team leader. And we both had the same weapon squad leader, and I think
Yes.
he had a big part to do in that weapon squad being so fun and being
Yeah.
wired tight too.
Yeah. He,
Um, go
yep.
ahead.
Yep. No, he was he's one of those guys that to me was more like, man, I wanna impress this guy. You know, I'm like
Uh huh.
he's what I see, what I think about when you think about like a ranger.
Yeah.
That's to me that was like, okay, this is the guy I want to impress. This is the guy I want to do everything I can to make happy. Like I wanted to get patted on the head, you know what I mean? Type situation, type type of thing. But he made it fun to be there, man. He was very good at teaching us, and any questions we had, it made it fun to go to work, and it made you want to go to work and want to succeed for this dude,
Right.
which makes it a good thing for everybody else because it's a dangerous job.
Right. I agree. It goes back to like what is the leadership? Is the leadership leading the charge from the front, which he did and many others in his spot did and were required to do, but
Yes.
it's really it's the other it's the inspiring piece, right? It's the
Mm,
motivating piece.
yep.
That's leadership. Like, they make the movies about, charging the machine gun nest, but like the day-to-day motivating and inspiring and getting people to do things. It's not fun doing maintenance on a striker, but
Mm,
to have a guy that can get you motivated to get that done and do a good job and explain it to you in a way that makes sense to you and you can get
mhm,
behind. And then you as a leader as well can inspire your guys to do that. That's a big deal. So like in Mosul, we were just constantly, constantly running these raids, these
yeah.
gaffes. So why don't you explain from your perspective, maybe not a specific mission, although if you have one in mind, you could use that. Why don't you
Mhm.
like tell the folks, describe like a typical day as like a gun team leader running a striker in Mosul back in that time. This was like 2008. What did your day look like doing that?
Well, first off, we have to go out there and PM or the strikers, which PM means so it was a preventative maintenance
That sounds right.
on on the strikers, which meant all the way from checking the tires, checking under the vehicle, making sure there was a lot of the time we had barbed wire, if you remember that, because people run through
Mhm.
a lot of stuff. Anything that could affect the striker later on that mission. We would check for that all the way to checking the oil, checking belts, like almost like a regular vehicle because it is a vehicle at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And then just cleaning the inside because sometimes you'd have stuff in there, either from a range, we would have rounds inside, or for anything that might happen. Checking the cages. I particularly had my striker was the med striker, the
Mm.
med vehicle. So inside my striker would fit a any kind of casualty or anything like that. So mine was a little bit wider due to the fact that it had to be able to getting medics and a casualty. Plus, if you remember, these strikers have a cage around them that protects them from
Right.
RPGs or small uh, type of rocket attacks.
Right.
So you have to make sure everything was good to go. Now, once you did that, that was part of your daily routine. Each weapons team leader would go do that. You know what I mean? There was a couple of us in there. And then just report back to our squad leader, go, hey man, it's good to go. And he would say, yeah, we're good to go. So he would pass it on to platoon sergeant or whomever. So we were good to go. And then you know, we would wait for a mission, which we had a mission every day, if you remember
Right.
that, up to a couple of missions a day. And that's another new thing that I got to do. I got to sit in the briefings. I was like, wow, they actually think that, or they think highly of me to sit me here, even though I knew nothing I they were talking about. But I got to sit there, and little by little, I learned, and I knew what they were saying and what we were about to do. What else? Oh, routes. We would plan routes, if you remember that.
Mhm.
We were in charge of that, or my squad leader was at the time, planning all the routes, which is another cool thing. he actually showed, at least showed me how to do it, and eventually I would plan some of the routes for the missions at towards the end of the deployment, which was pretty good, man, pretty cool. Um, plan the routes and
What
you know,
would what are some considerations that would go into planning the route? Like what type of thing? So obviously you need to get to the place, and you
mhm,
need to make sure you take a route that is going to be successful. I guess like like a bridge isn't down or
mhm.
something is in the way. What were kind of some other things that you'd have to think through as you were planning that?
One of the things was the most important part was creating checkpoints. Um, where are we traveling to? And if there's any only from open fields is one thing, but also you have, it's an urban environment in Iraq. So
Hmm.
you have buildings, you do have bridges, and those are some of the things that we had to look for because prior to us going there, you would have had, or they've had attacks where people would stand on the bridge, you know what I mean, undetected, and as the strikers go through, they would drop a grenade or something like that. So you had those dangers. So, we had to know how much gas we got as well. You don't want to plan a infill route and it's too long or whatever. We have checkpoints with the Iraqi army at the time as well. You know what I mean? They need to know. We need to know who's there.
Hmm.
And how close are we when we stop on those checkpoints, or we check ourselves on those checkpoints. Um, and then on the exfil routes, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Is it the fastest way to come back the same way, or do we take a different route? Um, we had a system. I don't remember the name of the system that would allow us to see the routes as we drove. Um, but I do remember it wasn't as updated as we would have liked it to be
Hmm.
because there were places where the system would say, hey, there's houses or buildings here, but as we drove by, there was nothing there.
Mm.
Or would say there's nothing there, but we drive by and it's so you have to kind of have uh, a second. You would have to plan, if I remember correctly, we would plan a second route
Mm.
just in case. And we would send that to everybody. If you remember that, and every vehicle would have it, and every team leader would have it as well.
That makes sense. I mean, mostly I would just hang out of the hatch and
Mm.
just, daydream about day daydream about the mission or just, like, taking the site to be 100% on it. Most of the time, I was, like, sightseeing Mosul, like, while we were I would have
Beautiful,
no clue
beautiful.
where we were in the city, where we were along the route. I honestly wouldn't. And part of that's my complacency. I'll own that, but also, like, my trust in you all. Like, you all
Yes.
knew what you were doing, like, you all had it down. Um we're in big strikers. I felt like there was technology, so I could like look around. You know what I'm saying?
Technology. Um,
Technology, and then also, I had to be in the headspace to, you know, to go do whatever we were going to do, climb, breach, do whatever.
mhm, mhm.
So I trusted you all to handle. You got to delegate. You can't do everything. You can't worry about
Yeah.
everything. But I gotta imagine like until this very moment, I never thought about it. I gotta imagine, I guess there probably weren't street signs. Like, it's not like navigating around, like, your hometown, right? It's like
Yeah.
so that's gotta add a lot of difficulty too. Like, you don't have street signs. If they're there, maybe you don't read the language. Maybe you don't trust that it's actually saying what it's supposed to say. And then you're trying to, and I think you undersell it a little bit. Mosul was extremely urban. It was like
Yes.
it was in some places it was a lot more dense than in most American cities. I think like some parts of
Yeah.
it was more like obviously it's an ancient culture.
Mhm.
So like some European style cities, really packed in tight, really small roads. So navigating in that was not like as simple as, like turning on Google Maps for sure.
You're right. And remember, we're rolling, I think, six strikers deep or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Wasn't there a T7? Didn't it go to was it nah, couldn't have been 7. But yeah, something like 6, something like that.
Yeah, it was a lot of strikers and navigating that put the squad the weapon squad leader into play here where he's got to be able to manage every single one of these strikers. He needs to tell them when to go, when to stop. At the end of the day, he was I don't want to say he was above the platoon sergeant, but he made the call. If he
Mhm.
said, "Hey man, I don't want us going down the road," then we just don't go down the road, no matter what
Mhm.
anybody said, because he knows why. You know, what I mean, he's the one in charge of making sure these strikers don't get stuck or we run into a bad situation. So you have to be very as best you could precise, on
Mhm.
where we're going and why we're going that route.
Mhm.
And you're right, a lot of those places, it's a lot more urban than maybe making it seem to be, because you would you would have to. I remember a couple of times where it sounds bad, but especially at night, if my computer system that showed me the road, and that's how we got along, by the way. So we would have the as we were driving, I'm looking at the system and I can see the roads.
Mhm.
Sometimes, and if I remember correctly, we had labeled the roads on that system, or the system itself had labeled them. So we're going off of the system, and I would just communicate with the driver, who's mind you, at this point he's inside a cabin with no windows. He's seeing an ISR image of what's in front of him. Not ISR, I'm sorry, a night vision image of
Right.
what's in front of him. So he's going after everything I say. Hey man, at this next street you make a right or
Right.
make a left or whatever. And so he's just following my command. I gotta make sure that if the route calls for that street for us to make a right on the street, for somebody to build a house or there's something blocking it, well, I have to stop the convoy, or the squad leader does at this point, and he goes, hold on, stop. Everybody stops, and then he sees the route, reassesses which way to go, and he makes a call on the spot. You know what I mean? Those are the kind of things, but you have to be careful because you don't know who's around the corner, or what might be laying there, or why is that route blocked now. Maybe they're redirecting us on purpose. Maybe they want us to go down this other road. So
Mhm.
you have that on your hands as well, as a squad leader. I think for him, making those calls.
Are there any sometimes when I think about Mosul, I remember coming in and out of the fob, I can't remember what I think it had didn't it have like a name? It was like Dog Leg Road or something like that?
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
that
yeah,
make any sense? It was
yeah.
Fob Merez, but and, like, I can vividly remember 'cause it was, like, the same every time, right? It's kinda like you're
Mhm.
getting jerked around as you're driving. I'm hanging out of the hatch, and I'm looking and it's relatively safe, so, like, my guard's down, but I can, like, vividly recall, like, the sound and the smell of the strikers as they're kinda, like, going through that dog leg right there. But for you as you're driving, are there parts of that city that, you can remember pretty
I
vividly?
remember I remember the right before we got out to the main city,
Mhm.
leaving that fog. If you remember correctly, we would have to snake in and out
Right.
through all these cement barriers they had.
Yes.
And you're doing that final radio check with all the
Mhm.
strikers, striker one, striker two, whatever the call sign was for the for the strikers, and we would check, and it was game on. You could joke and everything, but as soon as you got out that gate, I remember that you somebody had said that maybe previous deployment people that were deployed there said that as soon as you get out, rounds come flying, so you got to be ready. So thankfully, never happened, with us there. But I remember game face. You know what I mean? This is because now in my head, they're looking at me as a leader. I'm pretty sure nobody was looking at me like that, but in my head, that's the way I want. I thought they were looking at me. So no messing around, no joking around. Get to serious game time. So that's what I remember the most. The moment we were leaving that fob, that the dogleg road was the last road we turned right on, and it
Mm,
went straight
okay,
into the security area. They were, and then we make like a slight left into the barriers, and then we shove
okay,
it. Then we weave out into the main city. And that's right.
okay. Um, so so you all get us there, we unload, we do the job,
Mhm,
you all are positioning the strikers at advantageous points to
mhm,
help um isolate the target, but then also, prevent anyone from coming up on us.
mhm, mhm.
Um, I know you got a couple stories related to that. Is there anything you wanna is there are there any stories about, those type of situations that you're interested in sharing, in the next
Sure.
couple minutes we got?
I have one. Um, Again, one of the biggest things for anybody on the strikers were before we got there that we got briefed on was that we have to be ready for anybody. Because remember, urban environment, taller
Mhm.
buildings. Some people would set up on the buildings on top and drop grenades on strikers, which is very easily done in that type of environment. And so I was like, that first mission, I was so nervous. I was like, because I'm literally sitting out, half my body sitting out this striker. I got the I got the driver watching one side, and I'm watching this other side, but I'm also watching up and to the sides, right? And so I remember the whoever the assault team was goes in, they throw a couple bangers in there, they do their job. So now we're loud, so they know we're here. Plus, I'm sure they saw us coming. If that is the case, we're rolling like six strikers deep. So so I'm alert. I'm looking left and right. I'm waiting, and I look up, nothing there. And then within like I said like 5 minutes, I I'm looking around. I hear this metal thing just hit my striker, and I look, and it's in my eyes, it's a freaking grenade, right? And and I swear it sounds like I'm making this up, but I was thinking about the kid. I was like, if this thing blows up, you know what I mean, and somehow a blast goes inside, so I kind of brace for the impact of it, you know what I mean, and I held tight, and then I look at it, it's just a banger bot. So the banger they used inside that the assault breach, the at the time is the sergeant major. I think it was sergeant major. Yeah, it was sergeant major. He had picked it up and he goes, "Here, Ranger, make sure we police this up." He was just picking up the trash because he's so cool. He likes to leave things better than how he found it. And he goes, "Make sure we pick these up, Ranger." I'm like, "Roger, Sergeant Major." But at the same time, I think I shit myself. Sorry about that. But I was like, man, I thought it was a freaking grenade, but it wasn't. It was, obviously. And but it lets you know how at least for me how on the how not nervous, well maybe a little bit, but
Like tense,
tense. There
how
you go.
tense you, wound up. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, man, this that was scary. But then nothing happened. We had a fellow guy, another guy, one of the other gun team leaders there, who actually had a flare body.
Mhm.
One of the helicopters that flew by and shot some flares at some people. The body of the flare somehow landed inside the striker, and you know, it's a different story there. But just to let you know, that kind of stuff can happen, and and but yeah, that particular moment was pretty funny. At least now I see it.
That is hilarious, and,
Yeah.
I could see how I could see how that could be a concern.
Mhm,
Okay. So, we'll wrap it up here, but, so, okay, we talked about getting there, the actions on the objective. So when we come back, we can pick it back up. We can see if there are anything else from that deployment that you remember. What it was like for you in general, uh, being out there, and I'm also interested to know because later on, much later on, although I think you were still in, um, you never went back to Mosul, right? After that.
not to Mosul, but we did go back to Iraq. Camp Warhorse. I don't know exactly where that was, but
Okay.
in Iraq, but it was.
So and Mosul would end up eventually just being like completely obliterated by
Yes.
ISIS and the fight to take Mosul back from ISIS. And I have I have complex feelings about that because it's messed up to see pictures of Mosul. We fought really hard that summer to try to do some good, and then you look at pictures and the place is just like,
Oh yeah. Yes.
it's like a
Yes.
bomb. Literally, bombs went off there, but it looks unbelievable. And you're like, okay, well, what was all that for? But we'll get into that. But we'll do that in the next one. So,
All
uh,
right.
thank you, thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
listening, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye.